Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching us. Welcome back to the 76th episode of the Since I Was Young podcast for all things Heart of Midlothian. Joining you as always is myself, Ewan Ramsey, and Alan Scrimger. Alan, how are you doing? Good, so you well?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm good. Obviously, we're in the midst of an international break just now, so I'm a bit, should we say, calmer than I was this time last week.
Yeah, but you could also argue that we're in a bit of a like was it was it of a crossroads, like you're right now, with the club as well. Obviously we're going to be covering a bit of the Aberdeen game last week up at Pittodrie, where we lost 3 goals to 0. Which is obviously going to be a bit of a talking point, but mainly we wanted to do this the kind of podcast just to kind of see, like, again, like, not particularly where we're at in the season, but kind of where our expectations lie throughout the rest of the season for this year. What we think is kind of gone wrong. What things we feel has to change as well, and obviously, of course, because we absolutely hate Robbie Nielsen. Obviously, we want him out. We'll have no room for success at our club with that man in charge. So obviously, we're going to talk about that. Disclaimer: obviously, we don't mean that. We're going to obviously talk a bit about Robbie as well and see where that takes us. For this week's episode of the podcast. So, as always, guys, we do hope you enjoy. And as always, if you aren't subscribed through the YouTube page for the podcast, please think about subscribing. And if you want to get in contact with us via our socials as well, mainly our Twitter page, because that's where our abuse mainly comes from, please get in touch and we will answer as many questions, or i.e., Alan will answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. So thank you as always for joining us, guys. Always appreciated. So, Alan, I guess, we can kind of, just touch on the last performance that we had. As you said yourself, we're in amongst the international break just now. I believe Scotland are playing Cyprus, if I'm right in saying, but you couldn't care less. So obviously we had the trip to Aberdeen just last week there. 3 goals in quick succession in the space of about 20 minutes, which, I mean, yeah, you can argue that you could maybe expect that when you're playing the Old Firm, but even going to a hard place like Tawdry, you don't really expect 3 goals in quick succession to happen like that. So I remember that you were texting me, and I, maybe after about half an hour after the game started, I had a rant of texts from yourself, just a full on blown sort of rant. So from your perspective, Alan, obviously as I said at the start, we'll go into more depth about the season and the future as a whole. But what did you take from that? Obviously, we had the the incident after the game with James Hill as well, where he was having a bit of an argument with the fans as well. Emotions were high as well. Obviously, the players and Robbie weren't sort of too particularly happy with the performance. But what was your take, sort of overall after the result?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of said it to you in no uncertain terms. I'm not sitting saying that we should be winning in Pittodrie, because our away form is dire. We haven't won a game in the league in there since I think it was 2016 maybe was the last time we won. Which was a stat that kind of went over my head, as most stats do. Um, but yeah, like you go up there, you realize it's a massive game. It was a huge game. I think if had we won, I'm not saying that would have ruled Aberdeen out of finishing third, but it would have certainly dented them massively, and maybe just made it more of a two-horse race between ourselves and Hibs, which I would back us to get anyway. But it's annoying because, like you say, when you're down. not even in the first half an hour. Like we're not even talking about three goals. We're talking about one. The first 5 minutes, and it's sorry. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, I interrupted myself here. Feel free to cut this bit out or just leave it in because I'm a wally. Yeah, like when you concede a goal in the first 5 minutes, like we just it seems to just be a recent trait of ours that we just seem to be slow off the mark. And Aberdeen got at us, and to be fair to them, it was a system thing, which I'll probably rant about at some point later on in this episode. But yeah, and I said it to you just before we came on as well. It's the goals that we're conceding are virtually the same every week, or they're the same causes every week. It's an individual error, it's somebody missing a header, somebody losing a man at a corner. There's just continuing things, and you just think, right, like you can't blame injuries on that. Like you can't say, oh, because he's injured, that's why that happened. Or oh, we're missing so and so. Like it was really, really, really irritating. And then like by halftime, game's done already. So it's almost you're hoping that the players come out in the second half and have a goal and at least try and make it respectable. Robbie changed the system because he had to, because the system he started with did not work. And it stabilized a little bit in the second half, but we were just so far off it, which is so irritating because I think we even said last season, last episode, that this was probably the most important game of the season. This Aberdeen trip away. So, yeah, I was very, very annoyed about multiple things. James Hill obviously shouting at a fan after the game, the fan telling him to fuck off back to Bournemouth. Yeah, listen, I've not been a massive fan of James Hill, to be quite honest. I don't really see, what he had a good couple of appearances when he first arrived. I think we played St Mirren at Tiny, and he was good in that game. But yeah, I haven't kind of got the hype. But I've not been his biggest fan anyway after all his stepping stone chat. But he'll certainly not be getting that stepping stone anytime soon if he keeps going like that. But I do understand like your point when you said emotions are flying high and all the rest of it. And I understand it from both points. And to be fair, I don't know if you saw it, but Lauren Shankland, there was an interview that he did with the Evening News, and he basically said, if somebody thinks that they've done enough, then they should have a look at themselves, kind of thing. So, kind of took that as him calling out James Hill and probably another couple of his teammates because for such a big game, they just didn't look at the races at all, and that's an issue.
Mhm. I mean, just to kind of go back to like your point, like I mean, obviously, like like it's a team effort, and I'm not just kind of calling out like the back line because obviously, like that involves like team selection as well from the Robbie. But when you kind of look, I mean, at the back line that we have in the system that we're kind of playing, like was it obviously to the 3-4-3. It was weird. I was actually kind of thinking about this last night as well, where like this is one of the things where it can almost kind of frustrate me with Robbie, and like I'm sure that we've brought this up before. Like when the 3-4-3 system actually works, it works, and like
Mm-hmm.
we can go like on a quite good run, like with this setup as well. Um, but in that same respect as well, I think you know this is something that kind of has to be addressed, or if he's capable of addressing it as well, like in the sense that like when you said as well, like at half time, and I think the key word that you said is that he had to change it, not to change it to put like to kind of was change it up like more so to confuse the opposition and to benefit us. But you know, I think like we've played mainly the 3-4-3 like throughout the season mainly now, and we've brought it up a few times where there's not really like the best way to actually put it. Like there's not really like a contingency plan where he's not got a plan B. And I know I've mentioned that for so long, but I think, like you said, Alan, like I think the key word is that he changed it because he has to change it. Whereas, putting in an example where, if we're a goal down by halftime, if we're 2 goals up, by halftime, you know, it's the same things as you would expect. Where if we're if we're a goal down or two, like it would just throw sort of any attacking player he's got on. Whereas if we're a few goals up, we'll just kind of sit back and we'll defend that lead, and we'll just invite the pressure onto us, rather than sort of trying to kill the actual game off. So in that respect, sort of going back to the original point, the back line itself and the goals that we've conceded throughout it as well, like well, like you said, they've all been the same. It's been kind of just sloppy and not like was it switched on as well. You know, not to kind of pick out players as well, because like I said, it's sort of like it is a team effort, but you know most of that back line have not been on it at all. And I'm actually gonna not fully disagree with you, but I actually think that James Hill has actually been a bit more stable than some of the back line. That's just only my like opinion, but again, just to name a few, like since a Kingsley came back, I don't know where his form
Mm,
has went.
no.
I don't know where that's came from. The
Yeah.
fact that for the last few games, uh, Cochrane has not been featuring is a bit weird. Like I don't know if he's was it got something wrong like that, blah blah blah. Rolls, I don't think he's been on it particularly well either.
Yep.
Smith as well. Well, I wouldn't say that Smith's been off it, but again, it's it's not to kind of point him out be because of his age as well. But you do have to take that into consideration as well. I think the
Of
only
course.
kind of improved player is probably Toby Sabic, but even then,
Yeah.
it's just been I mean, I think the main thing for me, I think there's just not been any consistency, and I'm saying it throughout the whole team, and when it comes to this 3-4-3, you know, again, like we've mentioned it so many times that it just comes like it just like that like it becomes so predictable to other teams where, and you've pointed this out quite a few times. Like all the opposition team really needs to do is to shut down Snodgrass, and that's because that's where our kind of play starts from. And then you was it close him down, and then our creative play, like like is nowhere to be seen. So in that respect, in terms of the formation and the setup, and maybe even the personnel as well, or the robbery, like the backroom staff, where do you think this needs to actually change? Do you need to think it needs to just have an overhaul? Do you think that some players that you would maybe consider key, sort of players as well? And to be honest, I'm actually kind of pointing that at Barry Mackay, but that's a whole other story as well. But where do you think this needs to change in terms of this inconsistency, these sloppy goals, and that we're constantly seeing from?
think it's to me, and I mean this is obviously an incredibly obvious point to make, but in recent weeks, the formation is not working. It's the balance isn't right to that team, particularly defensively. I have to say, particularly defensively. Um, Kingsley, like you say, has just fallen off a cliff. Don't quite know what's happened to him. Cochrane's looked good, but not anywhere near his best.
Yeah.
But I think that's more to do with having somebody in front of him or not having somebody in front of him, as the case may be. Sibic, I love the man, but he's, I don't know if it's maybe complacency or maybe, he's, again, I don't know. And I wouldn't want to sit here and say, oh, he's switched off because the fans love him now and he's switched off. But there have been a few errors recently that he has been at fault for, a few goals that have been conceded because he's switched off at a certain point. But still love him, still absolutely love him. But, have to call it out where it's due. I've not been overly impressed with James Hill, but I've already said that. Um, I just think the issue for me, and that this is something that, it kind of ties it all together. Halkett's injury has totally changed how that defense wants to play,
Mm.
and Robbie, like we've seen it, Robbie's a big fan of playing it out from the back. He gets Xander Clark to play it short to one of his defenders, and then we progress it up the pitch, and that's how we build the play. Hearts fans, when they watch it in Tynecastle, they're not going to like it because sometimes it invites pressure from the opposition. But it, like you said earlier, when it works well. And we saw, like I was at the St Johnstone game a few weeks ago at Tiny, and some of the play that we were playing in that game was brilliant. But that was partially due to the fact that St Johnstone were just not great on the day either. But even then, there were still some moments where they could have caught us out higher up the pitch. I think the thing is for me, and that this kind of goes on to something that I mentioned just before we started. James Hill was brought in to fill the Halkett position in the defence.
Mm.
That's clear because it was around about the same time Halkett got injured and Hill came in. I think Halkett, Rolls, and Sibic, which is the three that we've kind of sorry, not Halkett, sorry, Sibic, Rolls, and Hill. Sorry, that's been the three that we've seen most recently.
Mm.
And I just think they're all very similar. Um, there's not one of them that will, if the ball's in the air, they're going to go and attack it. They're going to go and be aggressive and get rid of it. They almost wait for it to come to them, and that again invites the opposition to get there first, which is what we've seen a few times. Halkett is a defender that will just get rid of it. He's not interested in all the fancy stuff. I mean, he can do it. Halkett can pass a ball, but
Mm.
he's almost like that old fashioned defender that just goes, I don't care, where my head's going, but I'm getting rid of the ball. And I just think we've missed that. And I think when you have that kind of the other defenders that are around you feel a lot safer because they think, well, I can afford to bring the ball down and play it out because I know if something goes wrong, Halkett's going to be there to mop it up and to get rid of it. Um, but yeah, like that's kind of where I'm at defensively. The wing back situation is an interesting one as well. Against Aberdeen, he had Cochrane there, and then he brought him off after half an hour, subbed him for Kingsley. There was some whispers that Cochrane said something to Nielsen as he was walking off the pitch. I don't know what that was about, but apparently he wasn't very happy about getting taken off. But to be fair, half an hour into a game, I don't think you should be happy getting subbed off. But
Absolutely not.
he was getting rinsed by whoever it was on that side. I think it was Shinnie maybe or Duck, one of the two. Um, so yeah, but that was a strange substitution to just bring Kingsley on. That would have been a perfect time to change the system, but he chose to sub off a left back and bring on a left back. Um, Michael Smith, I love Michael Smith. I've always loved Michael Smith, but you've got to start thinking, right, is he going to get a contract for next year? Because if he's not, play somebody else. You know, me, I'm a big lover of Natty Atkinson. I'd love to see him get a run of games, but I don't think he will. Um, even play James Hill at right back. If you're going to stick with this 3-5-3-4-3, which to be honest, I don't think he will now. I think he has to change it now. The 3-4-3 has to be put in the bin. And I say that not because I don't think it's a good formation, because I think it is. And I think when it works well. But right now, we don't have the personnel to play it properly. And like even Snodgrass in midfield, like you touched on him, he's been so off it recently because, as you say, all that's happening is opposition teams are playing an extra man in midfield. We've got two in midfield, they've got three, and it's done. It's done. That's what Aberdeen did. And I love Snodgrass. I think he's been a fantastic player this season. But I've seen, and it's very very easy to kind of get bogged down in things when you don't win or you're not in good form and you start questioning everything. I've seen a lot of people saying they wouldn't give Snodgrass a new contract based off of that. I don't agree with that. I would
Nah.
still keep him for next year if he's keen to stay in, but
Hmm.
in a different system, in a different place in that midfield. But yeah, there's anyway. Long story short, the 3-4-3 has more negatives at the moment, and to me, it has to he has to change it. He has to do something different because we've seen him do it, like you said earlier. We've seen him do it during games when he realizes it's not working. But why not just start a game in a different shape? Like, why is he playing 3-4-3 and then 20 minutes into a match he's changing people around and making, alterations and stuff? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, the system itself annoys the hell out of me because we've got very good football players in this team, and it's the typical Robbie Tinkerman putting players in positions just to fit them in, and that irritates me so much,
I
so
can
much.
imagine. I can imagine, sir. I can imagine. But
I'm boiling up just talking about it now. The
but
game was last week, and I'm boiling up again.
but saying that as well, Alan, so like, obviously, I mean, would you well, like I'm gonna naturally like assume, would you just watch it back to like a back four?
100%, 100%.
And
I
who
think
and sorry, Alan, like I mean,
no, no.
who would you actually take out like that, like sort of back line? Because obviously, like you said, like Robbie can sometimes have a habit of just trying to fit players in just for the sake of it. So, who do you take out?
If I'm going for a back four based off players we've got right now, I would go Cochrane at left back. I would go Sibbick and Rolls in central defence, and I'd go Michael Smith at right back purely
Oh,
because
okay.
we saw Rolls and Sibbick play as a partnership earlier in the season when we had injuries. When he played a 4-3-3, I think it was, or even the rare occasions when he's played a 4-2-3-1. Rolls and Sibbick look like a partnership that can work. Kai Rolls played at the World Cup in a back four. So to me, it makes sense. Get the best out of him, play him in a four. Cochrane is a left back. I love Alex Cochrane. He's on my shortlist for Player of the Year, but a certain striker that's got 20 odd goals is probably going to walk away with that. But Cochrane's a left back. Just put him at left back. Michael Smith, okay, he's maybe not long for the club, but just play him as a right back. Don't tell him to bomb up and down the pitch. Put a winger in front of him. Let the winger bomb up and down the pitch. That's to me. It's just it screams of just keep it simple and back to basics almost.
So I was going to argue, like, I mean, would you not want somebody like, I mean, because obviously, like, I'm maybe giving a bit more credit to James Hill than you are, but like both like sort of points are like sort of kind of valid, but in that same sense as well, like just to kind of was it the counterpoint that if you're gonna stick Michael Smith at right back, I know you're saying about the like the wingers just wanting to bomb forward as well, but would you not want somebody that's a bit more energetic, a bit more um like sort of like was it the quick to get back, like in that same sense, whereas like again it's something that I've kind of seen in a few matches where like Michael Smith sometimes if he gets it caught out, that's it done. So yeah, that would be the question for you, and I do like apologize again as my screen has gone black and white. It seems to be a natural thing that's happening throughout this last few weeks, but paying no attention.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Oh, there we
See,
go. We're back.
wonderful.
Just when you point it out, we come back. No, look, I think there's the problem that we have at right back just now is that we don't have a complete right back. We have Michael Smith, who's very good at right back, but has his limitations.
Mm.
We have Nathaniel Atkinson, who's good going forward, but not very good defensively, which, it is what it is. There could be a shout to play James Hill at right back.
Yeah.
There could be a shout to even play Toby Sibbick at right back. But I think if you're going back to basics, which is what I think we need to do,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to stick with Michael Smith and just give him that defensive responsibility, and just even like I'm sure we'll touch on midfield and forwards, etc. But Alan Forrest, for me, I'm not saying he's not
Yeah.
set the hair light. He's not set the hair light,
No,
but he's not a
but
right back.
yeah, but like I don't
And
even think he's had a chance to do it though. Like even though
no,
when he came off the bench, yeah, granted he might have not made as much of an impact, but I don't think he's had a real shot to actually show what he can actually do.
yeah, definitely. I mean, he's when he's been played in positions that I'm not saying they're not natural to him because he's played at right wing back for Livingston. I'm sure he played in central midfield for Livingston at some point, but the guy is naturally a winger. We saw it in pre-season. We saw it at the start of the season when he started very well. He's a winger. Like, why? Like, again, this is, yeah, I could go down a Robbie Nielsen rant and I will
Oh,
shortly,
we
but
will. Don't you worry.
at the moment, I'm talking purely on the player basis. And I just think, I'm not saying Alan Forrest is the answer because, there's lots of things. But to me, play a guy in a position that he's familiar with, and he played it earlier in the season. Just let Michael Smith defend, essentially. Just let him defend, and just let Alan Forrest or whoever's on the right wing be a winger, and that's where the width can come from. Because the 3-4-3, the issue with that is the width comes from the fullbacks. And again, something I didn't mention before, but we're talking about being predictable. You're talking about a team putting a man on Snodgrass, killing us in terms of a progressive team. But all they need to do is pin our fullbacks back or get in behind them where the space is. And they're in again. We saw Celtic do it. Obviously, Celtic have got so much more quality than us, but teams have been doing it, exploit the spaces that we leave. And in a back four, you leave less space, essentially. That would be my view. And if Robbie Nielsen was sitting over there right now, I'm sure he would tell me something completely different because he's a Premier League manager and I'm just a Wally that sits and talks on a microphone. But that you asked for my opinion, that's my opinion.
Apologies about that. Unfortunately, I have had to switch. I was a venue, so I could be was closer to the Wi-Fi, so we won't have any of those problems. But I do not count on it. So, Alan, just going back to what we were discussing. So, the kind of looking at the squad as a whole. So, like throughout the last summer and the January, like sort of was a transfer window. For us, I think it would be reasonable to say that we did spend quite a bit, yeah, I know that it was a Celtic and the Rangers, tend to spend a lot more than sort of any other club in the league. But for us, you can say that it was quite a bit that we spent. So in that respect, I think most of the people that we brought in are very very good, was it signings. And I think for the long term, in terms if we want to be a selling was it a club, I think we've got some very good assets sort of in there. But just for this season in particular, do you think it's kind of been utilized well? From what we've been talking about, about the system, about the players, and the roles that were was it playing them in, the players that we brought in that have maybe not lived up to the hype that we thought they would. Where's your head, like, sort of kind of on that? And I would actually like to start, like, even though he was a signing last year, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it like a few episodes ago, and we mentioned him at the start, like, as well. Um, I'm going to be a bit bold to say, I think Barry Mackay in particular should be dropped for the next few games. And I'm not saying that to point him out in particular, because I think there is a few players in the squad as well that do deserve to be dropped, like to just like sort of like in a manner speaking, to essentially like to show that no player, and I mean no player in that team is indispensable. Like, there's no like sort of player that has a safe role in that squad. But you know, his form has just, again, it's kind of the same with Kingsley as well. Like, it's just like completely gone. But I think what kind of puts Mackay in a bit of a safer role, and I think it was I think it was the since well, like, sorry, the some of my story podcast, Corbett in particular, that I pointed this out, because Mackay can sometimes just give you some moments of the magic and create something. I think in the back of your mind, you almost like expect him to create something like in the moments that we need something, but more so this season. And again, I think it was us that mentioned it as well. Like, ever since he got his 3 year contract, you know, that kind of like, the magic has just seemed to kind of like evaporate and not be as near like, consistent as we want him to actually be. So in that same like sort of respect, do you feel as if there are like sort of overall players that we brought in that are not being like sort of utilized and maximized to their full kind of potential in the squad?
Definitely, definitely. I think you're bang on about Barry Mackay. I think he's just been not the same this season. But we've had conversations about Barry Mackay countless times. I think I even said last week, for every one good Barry Mackay game, and it doesn't even have to be a good 90 minutes. He can just do something like you said, something out of nothing. For every one moment like that, there's 5 or 6 moments where the stadium's shouting and bawling at him because he's given the ball away or he's run into somebody and he's just lost it. But I think without kind of touching on Barry Mackay too much, I think there are reasons as to why it's not working for him as much as it did previously. I think he's another one that's been kind of shifted around positionally. He's been played in central midfield next to Snodgrass to try and give a bit of a creative outlet that isn't Snodgrass in the middle of the pitch, but that hasn't worked. I think the biggest thing that you can say about Barry Mackay, though, is that he is missing Liam Boyce massively. Um, I said when Boyce got injured that that was going to be a real killer for us, and it was going to take us time to find a different way of playing. Because Boyce plays that sort of deep forward role unbelievably well,
Mm-hmm.
unbelievably well. We spoke about him countless times on this podcast, as have others, about the influence that he has on that forward line and the fact that defenders of the opposition team get drawn to him, which then opens the space up for a Barry Mackay to operate or for a Gino to operate. What we're seeing this season is Shankland, or certainly since Boyce's injury, is Shankland dropping deep and Shankland linking the play, which he's good at. He is good at. But when he's your top goal scoring number 9 striker, you don't want him playing deeper. You want him
Yeah,
as far up the pitch as you could possibly get him because we've seen a lot of Shankland's goals this season have been sort of reaction shots that he's put away or he's essentially been in the right place at the
yeah.
right time or he's been taking penalties, but they all count. Um, but yeah, but Barry Mackay is one of those players that needs to be put on the bench for a couple of weeks. But there's part of me that doesn't think that'll happen as much as I think it needs to. And I think the reason for why I don't think it'll happen is I don't really see anybody else that comes and plays in that position. Again, that falls down to January recruitment as well. I don't think we have a Barry Mackay type of player that we can take Barry Mackay out of the team and use instead of. I think you could say George Grant could do it, but I prefer George Grant centrally.
Yeah.
I think again, there's people out there that don't rate George Grant, but I think he's a very, very good
No.
player.
Yeah.
That just needs a run of games to get that confidence boost. But yeah, it's as I say, the squad overall, and I said it earlier, the squad overall is very, very good. You know, we've got talented players in this team. Like we've paid six-figure fees for, off the top of my head, Keogh. We paid a six-figure fee for Shankland. You know, and obviously Shankland has repaid that. But George Grant came at a cost. Alan Forrest was free.
Rose as
Oda
well. Yeah.
came. Yeah. Rules was a fee. Um, who else was I going to say? Oda, we paid a
Mm.
fee for him. And again, I'm not grouping Oda into it because to
No.
me, Oda is a player for next year.
Mm.
Um, can have the wee fleeting impacts here and there, but I think he's a player for next year. Garang Cool, another one. You know, we'll have paid. I know it's a loan, but
Yeah.
we'll be paying a decent wage, and we'll have paid Newcastle something to get him here. And I just don't think that those players have been as effective as we'd hoped they would have been. And is that down to Robbie not playing them, or is that down to them just not knowing the system or not really settling? I don't know. Even James Hill will have paid a decent fee for him to come up from Bournemouth. So that all adds on to the pressure on Robbie and to get it right. But equally, as I say, there are still some holes in this team, and I think Barry Mackay is playing every week because we don't have somebody that plays out on that wing, that left wing position. And if we do, they're totally escaping my mind anyway. But yeah, this is, I think I saw some shouts after the Aberdeen game that Snodgrass and Barry Mackay need to both be dropped, and I wouldn't disagree with that. Uh, for obvious reasons. I think Snodgrass has been off form because he's very slow and he isn't quite, pace isn't in his game. He's good at
No.
moving the ball, but when he gets shut down, he's shut down, and that's him. Barry Mackay's been off colour for a while. So yeah, look, the squad needs to be kind of. I think, and again, this is probably going down a different route, but I think the fact we're in an international break right now is a very good thing. I think all the media coverage that we've seen has been about this 3-4-3 system and how much it needs to just get put in the bin. And obviously Shanklin coming out saying what he said, James Hill coming out and apologising. I saw Stevie Humphreys doing a chat about it. Humphreys is another one that could come in for Barry Mackay, but they're different kinds of players.
On that note, get fucking
So,
signed. Wigger in the fucking bin as well. Come on. Come on,
oh
Humps.
mate, they're embarrassing. They're embarrassing themselves. They've
Mate.
fucking Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney is the least embarrassing thing about Wigan right now. That tells you everything.
Screams Vladimir
Fucking
Romanov all around, eh? Literally.
mate. But again, it's like we said. I think the squad just needs to. The players that aren't playing well need to acknowledge that they're not playing well. James Hill was obviously highlighted after the Aberdeen game by a fan, shouted all that stuff. I'm sure James Hill in himself will be looking at it going, yeah, I haven't been good enough since I've come up here, or I haven't been as good as I want to be. But there are lots of players right now that are off form, and as much as people will want me to sit here and blame Robbie Nielsen and scream Robbie Nielsen out from the rooftops, as much as Robbie's got his flaws and his faults, the players that he's putting on the pitch need to do the talking as well. And ultimately, for weeks, that hasn't been happening.
But do you think that kind of goes hand in hand as well? Where yeah, like I totally agree with you. Like I said like months and months ago, where when a team is not performing well, I think it falls down to both the coach and the players as well. Like I think that goes kind of like was it like was it hand in hand where like you see a lot of fans, especially where if a team's not doing well, it's just automatically straight to the manager. But since we've kind of opened up that door, like as well, like where like, as you said as well, where when the players have to look at themselves and have to realize that they're not playing very well. You know, this is something again, like a flaw in Robbie that I don't particularly like as well, where I've seen countless uh was it coaches and the managers like sort of do it where it doesn't have to be every single week we get beat, but there just doesn't seem to be any accountability of any sorts from from the Robbie at any time. And I'm not like, well, like again, I'm with you. I don't. I'm not in that camp where where anything goes wrong, I just ought to automatically blame him. But at the same time, there has got to be some sort of responsibility of account like ability from him as well. Um, and in that same sense as well, Alan. So when we look at like ahead, we've got a few games left before the split. We're 4 points in front of Aberdeen. Do you think, like we say, like sort of every single week, next week, like it's like we're away to Rugby Park. The next again week we're at home to St Mirren as well. Obviously each game is going to be considered a huge game, like of course. With that being said as well, what and it's just to play around with the idea so we can like both have our like opinions on it, it would be great to hear like your like opinions on it, you guys watching as well. Do you think that there will be even a hint or added on pressure from the fans that if we don't make a European spot this year, that Robbie's job could potentially be in jeopardy, or do you think that he has got enough in the bank if that were to happen that there's enough there for him to stay? It's a tricky
Depends.
one, I know.
It depends how ruthless the club want to be in terms of their vision for where we want to be as a club. Like we hear a lot of talk about, you know, finishing third and getting European football consistently. And Robbie talks about catching the old firm, which we all know is dream thinking. I don't expect us to catch the old firm anytime soon, purely because I think the old firm are just going to accelerate away from everyone. So no matter what we do, no matter who our manager is, I don't see us catching either of them. But yeah, I think as I say, it's social medias and all these things after a game. I'm the worst at it. People go on and they rant constantly, as I do, which that's what it's for. Everybody shares the same interests and everybody comes together and forms opinions and has a little rant, gets it off their chest almost. But when the thing is, earlier in the season, like we're speaking about it, we played Hibs twice. We beat them 3-0 back to back. We beat Aberdeen 5-0. Performance wise, they weren't brilliant, but we were winning. So nobody questions performance. Nobody says, oh, we were crap that day, but we won. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You get people saying, oh, how have we managed to win 5-0 against Aberdeen because we weren't that good? I
No.
think that's what I said. But, the performances come secondary when it's results. But at the moment, the results aren't there, and you're looking at performances and going, well, what like where's the bright spark here? What is the positive? And that's dangerous. That is a very, very dangerous place for us to be, which is also why, and I've seen lots and lots of people have Robbie out shouts, and some even wanted him sacked on the Monday after the game, which I hate to say it to those people, but that was never going to happen.
Cuckoo land, yes.
It's
The cuckoo land.
yeah, like I say, I'm at this point, and I'm a bit of a you used the word earlier, a bit of a crossroads myself, in that everybody that listens to this knows I am a Robbie Nielsen fan.
Hmm.
I'm not going to march up and down Gorgie Road parading him, but you know, I'm also a realist, and I'm also one of these people that I'll say if he's done something wrong, or if he needs to change something, or if I'm annoyed about something that he's done, or something that, a team selection or substitution or something's affected the game in the wrong way, I'll call him out and I'll say, what the fuck was that? And there's been more moments of that recently than there has been moments where I've gone, he got that right.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation. But people, as I say, people that want him sacked right now, it's never going to happen. If we finish third at the end of the season, he's going nowhere
No, of
because
course
that was
not.
his objective, was to
Yeah.
finish third. Even if, and it would be the most nail biting, nervous finish to the season. But if we somehow finish third by even 1 point, okay, at a stage this season, we've had gaps over fourth place of, I think, 7 or 8 points. If we finish third even by a point, Robbie will stay.
Hmm.
You know, I know people will go, oh, but he's thrown away a massive gap, blah, blah, blah. End of the season, the table, as long as Hearts are third, that's what the club will say. Well, that was your objective and you did it. And yeah, it's as I say, it really depends. I think the only way that Robbie gets sacked at the end of the season, which again, I don't think will happen. I'm not saying I want it to or not for people that are going to start calling me a happy clapper. If he gets sacked at the end of the season, it's because he's failed and the team's failed. And that could that be throwing third away? Catastrophically throwing third away, ending up fifth,
It
something like that. To
it
me,
would be a
that's
massive
when he gets
fuck up though.
sacked. Or at
It
least that's when the conversation has to happen.
Aye, but like it would be
Yeah.
a like
Oh,
I
of
mean
course it would. Of course it
like
would.
it would be like one of the most ridiculous like sort of was it like 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 fuck ups like especially when like we like we've been in front by like sort of 8 points and yeah I know
Yeah.
like we do have to take into account like at the like at the start of the season with them European football the injuries absolutely of course but you don't even then though like when you say like if we were to finish fifth I'd say that I'm much like you where like I'm pretty content with like with the was it the Robbie but you surely would have to say that there is a case for it if we were to finish fifth but even then I don't think it would actually happen because again I think there's kind of still this like smell, this like remnants of the Craig Levine as well, where like no matter how far the ship goes down, unless it gets like really fucking shit,
Mm-hmm.
like I just don't see him being called in by like by like was it like was it Anne Budge, Savage, Andrew McKinley,
Yeah.
like is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't see them as being that harsh, even if the calls are there for it. Because like I mean,
Yeah.
I know that Savage and McKinley weren't there by that point, but and it's not like just all leading down to her as well. But like back when like in the season that like in that we got the multi like the ship was like fucking far gone when
Yeah.
that actually happened. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that, like, if we were to finish fifth, yeah, it would be a dreadful end to the season. But, you know, like, and of course, where we want to be as a club as well to take that forward in to the future to do what we have been doing, like in terms of recruitment and the was and the F was and the was and the F foundation as well. Like just I just don't actually see where, in terms of a long term plan, like going back to when we first brought in Savage, and he did the interview with This Is My Story, and he had this this plan of where he wants to take the club, where he wants to see the club, the ambitions or the dreams that was it, as you so call it, to split the old firm, to win the league one day. It may be a bit harsh to say now, and it may be a bit like sort of like a bit like sort of pressurized, to ask you just now, but and it's more just to play kind of a devil's advocate with it. But do you see Robbie as that man to take that step further to move the club forward in terms of the aspects and the dreams that we want to actually achieve, or do you think it might be the only name or the situation that I can think of was back when Derek McInnes was in charge of Aberdeen for so long, consistent football, getting European football on a consistent basis. Granted, I know that for a lot of that time, Rangers weren't in the league as well, but and then when he had that one bad sort of year, that was right out, and then ever since then, Aberdeen have almost been in at in at the decline up until now, where they've started to gain a bit of more momentum. But do you think that that's the case where we should stick with the devil we know than the ones that we don't? It was a
I think it's
huge
a really
thing to ask. I know, sorry.
no. I think it's a very, very good question, and I think again, it's one of those questions that they'll ask at the end of the season, probably before they call Robbie in and say, right, what happened?
Hmm.
I think you touched on it in terms of like the dreams of finishing in the top two, or winning cups, etc., etc., and splitting the old firm, for example. I would love nothing more than to see Robbie Nielsen be the man that does that. Do I think he can? Is a different story entirely. I think, like you said before, we have Robbie will have reasons as to why. If we do chuck third place, Robbie will have reasons as to why, and he will have reasons for his defence as to why it's happened. Injuries, more games, injuries to key players, having to change systems, not having consistency of selection.
Yeah, but
All of
that won't fall
no,
from from was it him though? I don't see him
no,
saying,
of
look,
course,
I got
of
the century
course.
wrong, I got that wrong,
No, but I think it's one of those things. If at the end of the season he has to fight his corner to keep his job,
Aye,
I think he
no,
will.
yeah.
I think he would come out and say, "Yeah, I acknowledge I've done things wrong." And we have to remember as well that him and his coaching staff signed a new contract not that long ago,
Mm.
so that would factor into the club's thinking as well. As much as we've spoken about the fact that he's been backed in transfer windows, which that's probably what Joe Savage and Andrew McKinley and Anne Budge would say to him. Well, we've given you money. We've paid money for players that you wanted. So, there's lots of different sides to it. I think as well, for me, you've got to kind of look at it and say, what is the peak of Robbie Nielsen? What is the best that he could do at Hearts right now? The way that, I'm not talking right now as in this season, but in
Mm-hmm.
general. Like, we've been in cup finals, we haven't won one yet. He finished third last year. If he finishes third again this year, we're all throwing our toys out the pram about this, but if he finishes third this year, it'll be the first time we've finished back to back third for years.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself is a big achievement. Okay, you could say Aberdeen and Hibs have had down spells this season, and we've taken advantage by being better than them during those spells. But again, like I said earlier, if he finishes third again, that's the season objective. Okay, we would have wanted maybe a little bit of a longer cup run, but to get to a cup final, as we've seen with the Scottish Cup final or the Scottish Cup semi-finals, rather, you're gonna have to have a bit of luck in terms of who you draw in
Mm.
a cup. And we drew Celtic. That was it. We said it before. You need to catch Celtic on a very bad day, and you need to have a very good day. Neither of those things, well, one of those things didn't happen. The other one certainly did, and that's why we went out. But yeah, it's as I say, I am a Robbie Nielsen fan. I think I'm just an old romantic. I just like the fact that we've got a former player in charge. But there's something that somebody said recently, and it's the one thing that I don't agree with, and it's an argument that I've seen many, many times against people that are calling for Robbie to be out now. People come out and they say, "Oh, I want him out now," and the stock response is, "Okay, you want him out? Who'd you bring in?" Now, that to me is a totally pointless argument
Yeah,
because Hearts, where we are right now, is a very attractive club.
yeah.
You know, we're clearly financially in a good place. We're doing okay positionally in the
Hmm.
league. We've got a good squad of players, international caps across multiple positions. If the Hearts job became available tomorrow, there would be plenty of attractive managers that would be interested in that job.
Hmm.
So, but then, like you say, is it better the devil you know or the devil you don't? I really don't know. I think has Robbie Nielsen reached that peak of where he can take Hearts? I don't know. I honestly don't. And I hope for him
Hmm.
that he hasn't. I hope there's more in the tank. And I hope that certainly against Kilmarnock away, again, people, before I go down that, just mentioning away
Yeah.
has brought something back to me.
Anxiety, yeah.
People criticize it. Yeah, people criticize our away form. People say,
No,
"Oh, we're not good enough away from home." We've
mate,
not been
we've
good
been
enough away
away
from
for
home.
fucking years.
Yeah, yeah.
I mind there was a stat that I didn't get a chance to to send you, but it was somebody that did, did did it, and it was actually quite a good read, like kind of comparing both Robbie's record, Craig Levine's record, and Jim Driver's like sort of, like it was a record in terms of wins, draws, and losses, and the away record was pretty similar between the three, and like again, like yeah, that's maybe something that was maybe part of his like kind of side objectives, like to try and get like sort of better at playing away from home, which in some games throughout this
Hmm.
season, I think we have done. But again, it's just trying to build up that consistency as well. So I don't think you can lay all the blame at his door for that because, like you said, we've been constantly shite like away from home.
Yeah, no, it is. It's true, and I think, as I say, that it's one of those things. It's one of those lazy stats that people use to criticize Robbie Nielsen. If you look into it and you say we've been pretty average away from home for a very long time, and that's a club mentality thing,
Mm.
perhaps. Do you need a different manager to come in and change the mentality? It's that's something else. But yeah, it's just as I say, Robbie, like to kind of look back to what I was gonna say,
Mm.
the next game away from home against Kilmarnock,
Go on, say
Robbie
it.
Nielsen he
Say it.
needs to have a
Massive.
think. That's massive. It's massive. It's a fucking massive game.
Biggest
Nah,
game of the season,
oh,
that.
oh yeah, yeah. But Robbie needs to get a reaction from his players, but he also needs to give one as well because God forbid we don't start that game well or we chuck a goal in after 5 minutes.
Mate.
The fans who will travel because our away support this season has been phenomenal.
That's the only thing that has been consistent throughout
Well, yeah,
the year.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I said earlier on, there's not many positives to take. That is literally the positive. Is the fans have been phenomenal, but in terms of on the pitch,
Yeah.
there's not been a lot.
No.
But yeah, I think if we don't do something different against Kilmarnock, even when the team news comes out, if people look at that team and go, "Fuck off, he's done 3-4-3 again,"
No.
before kickoff, the levels of anxiety and nervousness and tension, just from me, because you know
Yeah.
what I'm like,
Oh yeah, no. 100%.
will be going through the roof. But
Well,
yeah, I hope that he changes it. I hope he does something different. He's a stubborn fucker though, so I genuinely would not be surprised whatever way it goes.
Well, since we're on that note, Alan, like we can wrap things up with a look ahead to the Kilmarnock game away, of course. Obviously, again, the Kilmarnock are are kind of in the same boat where they're still uh, playing for something, more specifically like a place in the top flight for next year. Um, yeah, I'm trying to the last few episodes that we've done. My optimism has been sucked out of me, like literally. Like I'm not sitting here with confidence that we will win, and that's kind of where I'm at in terms of where the team is now, the performances, etc. I'd like to think, at this point last month, we would be sitting, yes, going to a Rugby Park is a very winnable game. I mean, if I mind the last time, we played at Rugby Park, I may be wrong, but it was when we scored in the very last minute with Natty Atkinson. Was that right?
I think you're right. I think
Aye.
you're right. Again, memory's terrible, but
Yeah,
I think
I
you're
no, no,
right.
no, again, but even then, that should be we talked about it, again, even going away from home in these sort of games, again, kind of, putting the squads side by side, we should be was it coming away with 3 points, but again, like you said, there's got to be some sort of was it a reaction from this, and it can't come just from the players as well. It's got to be from Robbie and the staff as well. So in that same the context, mate, obviously I 100% agree that there's got to be a change, but as you said as well, being as stubborn as he is, do you actually think that there might be a good chance that he won't change the system and he'll stick to it like his guns in this 3-4-3 system?
I've already said that. I hope for his sake that he does change it, because if he doesn't, the noise will get louder. Um, and yeah, like I say, I think he will change it. I do. I think he will. I think the fact we're in an international break, and okay, at the moment our Australian players are away.
Hmm.
Cool scored his first goal for Australia the other night there, to be fair. Didn't mention that earlier, but fair play to him. Yeah, so we're missing our Australians and we're missing Xander Clark, and I think that's pretty much it. So he's got a decent group of players that he can work with during this international break. And on a new system would be fantastic. Um, just get back to basics, as I say, back to basics. I mean, Kilmarnock are on a run of 5 games without a win, but they've lost
Well,
three, and
they've
yeah,
come
they've.
to the right team to get the 3 points, mate.
Well, the thing that makes it even worse is so in the last 5 games they've played two at home and three away. They lost the three away and they drew the two at home. So, granted, in that spell they have played Hibs and Rangers away. The two home games though were St Johnstone and Motherwell, and they got points in those games, a point each rather. So, in terms of for me, it's not an easy place to go. But then we say that every week away from
Precisely.
home. We don't have a good away record. I hope for the sake of the players, for the sake of Robbie, for the sake of the fans that travel, because the fans that travelled up to Aberdeen, they sold out the allocation and they were absolutely shortchanged massively.
Mm-hmm.
The club should be refunding them after that, to be quite honest with you. But the same numbers of fans will travel to Kilmarnock and the same numbers of fans will back the club because it's what we do.
Mm.
But they deserve so much better than what we saw against Aberdeen. And I
100%.
hope, for the sake of all involved, that we get better than what we saw against Aberdeen because we have to. We
Yeah,
absolutely have to.
absolutely, Alan. But in that same sense as well, as we wrap up, can I give you the most probably the most difficult was it a question out of the entire was it episode? A score prediction for us, mate.
Right. I will go for the same scoreline that Kilmarnock have had in their two home games that they've drawn. I'm going for a 1-1.
Yeah,
And I hate that. I
it's
absolutely hate
it's
that for the
horrible,
second week
but
in a row, I'm going for a draw.
I again, like, I'm gonna be on the same bus as you, mate. I'm actually gonna go for a 0-0. I think if we're gonna change the system, you know, like, obviously you like expect it to work first time, but again, like, just like, like adapting, because we've been doing the 3-4-3 for quite a while now. I think it might take a game or two for it to change, but if it does actually change, who knows? But we would love to hear all your responses and all your comments. Obviously, like, it's been a bit of a longer episode as well, but we would love to hear, like, sort of everything that we've talked about as well. Is Robbie the right man to take us forward for the future? Do you think there has to be a change in terms of structure, in terms of formation, etc.? And what your score predictions for the game away at Kilmarnock, and what you would like to see changed in particular. So, from myself and Alan's fantastic rant, we would like to thank you for watching this 76th episode of the Since I Was Young podcast. So, thank you very much to all. And if you aren't subscribed, as always, please think about subscribing. And if you want to get in contact with us via our socials as well, they'll be on screen and in the description, as always, guys. So, from myself and Alan, hopefully we will be in a bit of a better mood after the game against Kilmarnock. But again, as always, for all the travelling support going up there, hope you have a good one, and I hope you have a result to shout about. So from myself and Alan, we will see you next time. You all take care. Bye for now.